Okay, so I grew up in Antwerp in Belgium. I have two younger sisters, very basic household. And then I was always very into sports. I love outdoors. I love animals, like things like rock climbing, kind of adventurous kid. And then when I was 14, I got scouted to become a model. But because of my very adventurous, not fashionless side, I didn't immediately act on it. But then different agencies in Belgium kept asking me, giving me cards. And so by the time I turned 15, me and my mom were like, maybe we should, go to an agency and see what it is. Because we also didn't really know what modeling was. And then my agency actually saw a lot of potential in me, like more than we would have ever expected. But they did tell me that at the time I would have to lose weight and like fit in the sizes to aim for the level that they had in mind for me, which is like high fashion. So I put in the work. I managed to fit in their sizes, and then I worked for Louis Vuitton when I was 16 as my first show. And from there, my career took off. But at the same time, I was always like, school was very important to me. So I stayed, like I finished high school, I started university, and at the same time I would start doing like campaigns, travel around the world. My first campaign was for Valentino in Africa, which was a dream since I was like a baby. So yeah, it was hard, the combination of doing school and modeling, because it was pretty intense. But I wanted to give both 100, so I just kept going. And then by the time I turned 18 and finished high school, so I started university, but I also was doing modeling full time at the time. And because modeling was going better than I expected, I kind of had to make a choice, like, or I go full time and I move to a city, like a fashion city. And here I had a choice between London, Paris, Milan. Like, it's not the best option, but you can, or New York. And for me, New York, like, attracted me most. So I decided to move to New York, and then I transferred to online courses because I just like to be busy. But in the meantime, like, modeling still worked really well for me. And then over the years, I live in New York for 5 years now. I foster dogs in my free time because I still love animals. I managed to get my green card in October. So
Congrats.
I'm very happy about that. And since I got my green card, I'm also officially coaching because on a working visa, you're only allowed to have one job in the US. So that was one of the main goals why I wanted to get that green card. So yeah. I think
That's amazing. I'm so glad you finally got your, because I mean, the reality is like, you are a hustler. You go, go, go nonstop. And I think that there's such a perception with models. And I've known you now for 5 years, six, like a while. Like, and it's weird to think that, but like, I remember you coming into class and like, you can tell a lot about someone, to me, according to how they work out. Like their work ethic, their determination, their consistency. Like there's so many pieces of it. Because when you work out, it's a side that not everyone gets to see. So it's like, it's the side that you struggle. It's a side that you might not be good at. It's learning new things, movements. And I think that not everyone is always good at that trial and error. So anyhow, when I like was teaching fitness classes or doing anything having to do with fitness, and I see someone, I immediately know a lot about them just according to their work ethic. So I know that you totally, one, give it all the time. I know that you like are just constantly determined. So it's really fun to see how you progress. And also on your social media, I see like you're here and there and you're constantly everywhere. And I think that there's so many different pieces to your journey. So whether it's you're traveling or you're studying while you're working and doing all these different things, I want to go back a little bit. So the one piece is, do you think that, so you were scouted specifically according to your look when you were young. Do you think that most models are found that way, or is it they just try out and then it's like they keep trying until they find something, or they keep trying until they are like, okay, I'm sick of no's, I'm just over it. Do you know what I mean? Because I feel like it's really a thing that a lot of, not maybe not a lot, but I think a lot of girls aspire towards. And for you, it just fell in your lap. So, which is amazing. But do you think that it's like girls are better off, like they can be found, or they should just, if they're not found, they're probably not good? Does that make sense?
Yeah, it definitely both happens. Like there are a lot of girls that try and they send their pictures to agencies, and then they might get an appointment, they might not. So they like, some try and some then eventually get the work, and some try and they don't. But for modeling, you have to have a certain look. Like an agency has to see something specific in you that they think might make them money, because otherwise there's no reason for them to sign you on.
Right.
So it's definitely about your look. There are things that you can change about yourself. Like when I was scouted, as I said, like my measurements were not good. I was still wearing braces. Like my skin was not great. I mean, I was a 15-year-old girl. Like, and I worked out a lot, but I ate like shit. So yeah, I mean, most of the times, like what agencies do, and I know from the girls that I know, like high fashion models are usually scouted. If that's a good thing or a bad thing, I don't always know, because it's like for me, like I kind of started working in a world that wasn't in alignment with who I was. So, and I think if you want to do it and you kind of put yourself out there, it's more like actors and actresses, right? Like you do acting school, and then from there you do castings, then you get better, and then you get scout. As a model, it's more like, oh, like I think you can become a model, and you're just like dropped into that world when you're 15 years old, and you're just like, oh, what? These are all people like that I don't know. Like you're trying to fit in, but it's hard. It can be, especially at a young age. I think
you would do it again.
What I say to people now is that I would probably have started, but then at a later age, because like mentally I wasn't prepared, and so which caused that I was dealing with some mental and physical issues for a few years. And I don't like put any blame on certain people or the industry, and it's more because I was 15, I was a kid.
Yeah.
And then you don't even know who you are yet. And then, as I just said, like I tried to be someone I wasn't for a long time, so I didn't feel like I belonged in a way. But at the same time, I was like working, like everywhere and doing great jobs. And so then my friends at home, they wouldn't understand why I wasn't feeling good, because like they saw the big pictures and campaigns and Vogue magazines and interviews, and but for me, I was surrounded by like top models like all the time. So yes, I would do the Valentino campaign, but I would not do the Versace campaign or the Dior campaign. And that's like, you're more focused on what you're not doing than what you are doing.
Exactly. Yeah, it's interesting how our mind works, right? Like it's easier to see the bad comments rather than the good. And obviously, generally, for most people, the good outweighs the bad. So it's like you should really take the good and run with it and love it and just be happy, but it's so easy to focus on the bad. So I know exactly what you're talking about. I feel like there's so many places and directions I want to go with this, so I'm like trying to contain myself.
We can do a second interview.
Yeah, right. If we can ever make it happen. So, as you said, you're here and there and traveling. What are some of the aspects, like, obviously you probably get lonely. You keep yourself busy. Are relationships an option? Like, how do you manage? Like, how do you do it? Because you are in a different city, even though your home base was New York for a long time. When you have a campaign or you have somewhere you have to go, how do you do it?
So are you now referring more to back in the days or right now?
Both.
So I think if we talk about age 16 to 20, I was working so much and still in school that like I did have a boyfriend at the time, like when I was 18. So I was able to kind of maintain that, but it would also be like not seeing each other for 2 months and then like being together for a full on 2 weeks, which is for young adults also very intense to live a relationship like that. And then I had time for my family whenever I would go back home, but I didn't go to any parties or festivals, or I hadn't drinking any alcohol before I was like 20 and came to New York. So I definitely missed that part, I think, of like being young and just like exploring life, because I was really living in a work environment. And as you said, like I traveled so much, there was also no opportunity to build actual connections. And yeah, it was also exhausting, just from like working and then going back to school and flying out again and working back to school. If it's too bright, you've got to tell me.
Perfect.
But then over time, like now, especially since I stopped walking shows, because every show season, like fashion weeks are 1.5 months so first you start in New York, and there you start the castings and doing shows. From there you fly to London, where you do castings and shows at the same time, and you're jet lagged from New York. Then from there you go to Milan, where you do again shows, castings, and then you still gotta go to Paris, where it's another 2 weeks, and there are like some really important clients. So you really gotta push through, but people don't realize how intense fashion weeks are. But even for the makeup artists, photographers, like people that go watch the fashion weeks, like it's a very intense and long period. And as a model, it's not really to make money. It's more as exposure. Like if you walk a really good show, you can get a good magazine and you might book a good campaign. But if you never walked a good show, like it's pretty hard to get on a high level and like get your rates up. So the first years you need that. So I did, I think 5 years of like show seasons, and you have a season in September, and then you have haute couture, and then you have another season like fall winter season, and another haute couture, and then in between you have resort shows, which would be like in Rio de Janeiro, in Dubai, in Beijing, like. So it's all year round, and that's not even what's making you money, right? That's just what you need to get the exposure. And then from there, the big jobs are in between the shows. So when I walked shows, I didn't really have time for myself or my social life, and it was just work and school. But then once I stopped doing shows, now I work more on direct bookings. So now I do have the space, and that's also why right now, like I feel like I live a perfect balance, but I worked really hard to get here.
Because I think that a lot of girls and guys, for that matter, have this image of, oh, I just get to stand here and take pictures, and it's lovely, it's the best. And I think that you know that it's not that at all. It's completely exhausting. What would a general day look like for during these busy seasons, right? Because it's a month and a half of just complete chaos, busyness, probably minimal sleep or barely any. What would a day look like, just so people can know how crazy it is? Because not only are you doing this to your body, but you're also dealing with all the other people and all the chaos, schlepping back and forth here and there, dealing with all the outside noise that happens. What's that kind of look like?
So a day during like the busiest moments of fashion week is you would wake up and have like 5 appointments on like a chart. So your agency sends over at night like a certain chart with different castings. A casting means that you go somewhere where you have to usually show your walk, show yourself, and then you can leave. But it can also some take like 3-hour wait before you can do that. So you never really know like how long you're gonna be somewhere. So that's one thing that like, it can take up entire days. Then after a casting, there's always or a callback or a fitting. So that means that you have to go back to that client. So you might start with 5 appointments, but then you're doing one casting, and then you get a call from your agent like, oh, but you have to run to a fitting for this one after this, and then you have a callback for that one after that. So you're just like constantly going from place to place. And if it's like, for example, like London, such a big city, from getting from one place to another is also, as a young girl, just all by yourself, always a whole thing to like figure out and get yourself around. And it's also the pressure, I think, when you're young, and sometimes they can tell you like you have to be there at this time, but you're like, I'm stuck here, like, and I waited already for 2 hours, like I don't want to, like, and so it's just like, it feels like your life is depending on it, just that constant stress. And then something that I never really understood, but a show, like, they always do fittings the day right before the show. So you might go to a client, do a casting like a week ahead, and then like 3 days ahead you do a fitting. But then the day before the show, they like almost always want you to come back to try the clothes and like do the measurements and do the walk. And so sometimes you're until like 2 a.m. in the morning standing on heels, like fitting clothes, and then you finally get in bed. But then before every show, the call time, it's called, so that means that you have to get there as a model, because you have to do a rehearsal, so practice, then you have to do hair and makeup, and they usually want you to be there 4 hours ahead. So but if you think about, you maybe walk 3 shows in one day, in between you have fittings and castings, and you were at a fitting like the night before for the show you're doing that day, and it's like, it's just like so much, like it's very draining. And then they still want you to look good, and there's a whole point, like some jobs, people go out in the weekend and then on Monday they're like, oh, I'm hungover, like I look like shit, but you're just sitting on a desk, like who cares? But we have to look good, like that's
your job. Yeah.
So it's like constantly they have to like give your best self, and you can't show the clients that you're tired, you can't show the people that you work for that you're feeling that way. So, and then when you finally have that time off, it kind of all like hits you. So like when I would be with my family or with my boyfriend, and I would just break because I would be so tired and drained, and all the stress and emotions just come out.
Have you had any dangerous or scary things happen being by yourself in other cities?
I have had situations, like I do remember this like one weird situation in Paris that I remembered seeing the same guy like 4 times. And then I told my parents, like, I don't know if this guy's following me, but I felt a little like not safe. Mm-hmm. One of the things I've always, like my parents, they do karate, they train resilience training. So I grew up with martial arts and like techniques against bullying and stuff as a kid. So I always learned, like, I'm not going to put myself in a riskful situation for no reason. Mm-hmm. So like my safety is really important to me. So also when I did modeling, I never went to after parties or to like dinners, or if I get invited by like people I don't know, just like to go out or whatever, like I stayed away from all that. So I think because of doing that, I kind of, never got into like situations like that in a way, like party wise and abuse.
Yeah, you got lucky. I mean, it's smart, it makes sense, but also I know there's a lot of, I'm sure you've heard crazy stories with girls.
Yeah, it's just as I say, sometimes, I mean, some stories are horrible and like not their fault, but then other stories that I hear, I'm like, yeah, it's kind of like, it makes sense. If you're going to a party of people you don't know and you get wasted, like you wake up the next morning and like, I mean, you had a choice at some point.
Yeah.
But in the end, like still traveling around the world, like, and then I'm talking about like the whole world by yourself, is still just sometimes a scary situation.
Yeah, it is. It's funny because I studied abroad. I studied in Italy, and then I also studied in China, and I went by myself both times. And same, I grew up in a little town. I grew up with martial arts, thank God, because I feel comfortable being by myself.
Yeah.
But I think that if I didn't, and also with my parents, like my parents they're comfortable knowing that I can handle myself. Like they're comfortable. Obviously, I'm sure that, and even now being a parent, like I already have my 3-year-old enrolled in jiu-jitsu, like, because I think it's so important for girls, especially in being someone who's adventurous and wants to travel and do things. Like, it's scary because there are creeps and there are people who, for whatever reason, just want to hurt you or take advantage or whatever. And I think that having that discipline plays into exactly what you're saying about like not going to parties and being responsible and being aware and just knowing what's going on around you. And sadly, most girls don't, or they think that they're so special or invisible, so they don't think that anything bad can happen to them, but it happens in a second. So I'm so glad to hear that you haven't had anything crazy.
No, yeah, and it's the same as you said, like my parents were always so focused, like even now, like I'm almost 25, and whenever I hang up the phone with my dad, he's like, and be safe. It's like the last thing he says every single time I see him or hear him.
Yeah.
And when my parents, because they were actually like karate teachers at my school when I was younger, and I didn't always like it. I was like, like I'm the kid of the teachers, and just the resilience training too. It's like against bullying, and I was like, like I can see it's good, but I didn't really care. But then when I was 16 and was in a big city because I'm also more from the countryside. Mm-hmm. So just being around so many people, then like I was so grateful for what they taught me. And as you said, like the awareness of your surroundings and just like the little things is it's like if you're by yourself, don't wear headphones and a hoodie on because you don't know what's going on around. Like I would always have my fists in my my sweater just if it's like late at night, like just in case, and just always be prepared. So I'm very grateful, and I also still continue doing martial arts because of that reason, because I think it's so important to be able to protect yourself, just even though it never happens, just to know that you can.
Yeah, knock on wood. So, and then I don't know why you just reminded me. So you said something before about, I guess when we were discussing the different models and being scouted versus trying out this and that. Do you think, because you've obviously worked with the best of the best, the top of the line, do you think that, and especially now with social media, you can see an evolution of how girls looked? Like they looked like this, and then they got all this work done, and now they would look like this. Do you think that it's like, what? Like, I guess they want to be a model so bad that they're willing to just alter the way they look? Or, because I've seen your sisters, I know you guys all look the exact same. So clearly this is how you look. Like you were just born, gifted, or with the look. But when you see girls who, they look like this, and then this, it's like, do you think they're cheating? No. What do you think?
I mean...
Do you know what I'm saying?
Yeah, like I know what you're saying, and I think they're... like even like very famous people as well that like get jobs still like that way. If it's fair, like I don't really like using the word fair in life. Like I don't think life is ever fair.
Yeah.
If it's cheating, I don't know, because from the outside maybe they might make more money, but in the inside, like I don't think they will ever, like they know it's not who they truly are. So I think then the feeling of like you faking it, just living with that, is so much more painful than at least get rejected and like find something else that you're very passionate about. That's like what I think. But also just this industry in general, like when I started, which is December 10 years ago, like there was a certain time, right? Like a model was skinny and pretty and like in the Kate Moss days and like, but then over time, like so much changed, and in a lot of ways, I think very positive, as in like they look for people that show who you truly are and are more like showing different sizes and different fits and personalities, and but that also in a way for models like me, that there was a certain path that we follow, right? As I just said, the shows and the magazines and the campaigns, and that it suddenly like all changed. So it's also a very unpredictable like industry in general. So I think that even changing yourself for this industry doesn't always make sense, because it can change from one day in another of like what look they're looking for.
Yeah, that it is. It's really interesting. You said, I mean, just as simple as like the lip trend, the eyebrow trend, like fades and phases and fads come in and out, right? Like, so sizes, big, that, small. The one thing that I feel like I've seen more of, well, on one side I see more, which I don't agree with, is the obesity thing. Like, obesity is just not healthy, all around bad. So they shouldn't be pushing it. But I do really appreciate, I like the strong models. Like, they look healthy and fit and muscly and strong. I love that phase or fad that's happening. What do you think?
I agree. I love when they're pushing for healthy, and I also like, I'm very into sports, so when I see that, I'm like, yes, we're there, you know?
Yeah.
Because when, as I said, like when I was 15, I was actually very strong and muscular, but then to become a model, I had to, for my build, like I had to become really skinny. So, but it's also not always healthy. So I don't believe in obesity, but I also don't believe in like very skinny like advertising. So I really hope that eventually everything will kind of transition in just like a healthy person. And but then there are other things that, like for me, for example, the last years I hear it a lot, like, you're too pretty. And then it's for me kind of like, this is why I used to get booked. But then there was this phase, especially during COVID, that they were more looking for like edgy and cool and like, and then it's just like, okay, well, for me, it's
Like,
not,
what is that? Tattoos? Piercings? What does that mean? Edgy cool?
I guess, yeah, and also like short, like boyish looks.
I
Like
mean,
my age, at some point she made a joke. She was like, "You'll have to, you know, like punch out a teeth or something to just like get back in the shows." Because like I don't know what they're booking right now, but it's
Well, they're booking a lot of I don't know how to say it like gently, but like odd bodies. Like they want the boobs and the penis, like the boys that are girls and the girls that are boys. Like they want that stuff. It seems like, and the obese things. Like they
they're
don't just
trying
want a
to-
pretty girl.
Yeah, I feel like they're trying to show, because they used to, you know, like book pretty girls. That now they're like trying to show, because there was so much, like, like, not, I wouldn't say protests, like maybe not that intense, but just like so much comments on like, oh, it's only, you know, like, they're like, no, we accept everyone, right? So now if you have a show, you have like, you have a dark skinned girl, you have an Asian girl, you have like a white girl, you have blonde hair, you have like a thick model, you have a thin model, like you have a sportive model. It's just like they're trying to like show like, look, we accept everyone, like everyone's welcome. And in one way, I think it's great, and I think it's very important. But on the other side, sometimes I think that makes the difference even bigger, because in my opinion, you should see every person as a person and not as a color or as a body. Or so yeah, it's like I think we're still like trying to find that midway to work for everyone.
Yeah, I absolutely agree, because I think that there's so many when you create a separation, then you're creating a division. Like it's very simple. Like, but the other thing is like, so I went to FIT, and I remember at one point in a class something, and it was literally verbatim for, depending on the show and whatever it is, but models are used like as hangers, right? So like the clothes should just hang on them. And I think that it's evolved past that to some degree, and depending on the brand. But like, just to kind of you're showing the clothes. Like, yes, you are showing the models depending on what type of, I guess, like whether it's a runway show or a billboard or whatever the campaign is. But you're really showing the clothes. You're trying to sell the clothes. So I think that it's just so interesting that it's like doing all the different model types rather than what the clothes look best on.
Yeah, and I love that you say that, because I actually have these conversations with my mom even sometimes, that like a good designer was just like, I remember the collections, like for example, Valentino used to be one of my favorites, just like especially the campaign I shot in Kenya, in Africa, just like all the like tribal, like I used to be in love with their clothes, and it was just so unique, and it was all about that, right? Like it was all about the clothes. But then now it's more about like the show, like the presentation, the people they use, the people they don't use, the advertising around it, like what letters are in it. And I'm like, it's not about the clothes anymore, and which is what fashion used to be all about.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's so sad that so much politics has gotten into just the beauty of clothing.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't make sense. I mean, it makes sense, but it's so sad. Like it shouldn't be so consuming.
Yeah, I agree.
What is that Valentino campaign in Kenya? Is that your favorite thing you ever done, or what's your favorite?
I think for me personally, that was my favorite because, like going to Africa and like I'm very, as I said, I love animals. So seeing giraffes and elephants and like, because we actually were staying in the Amoseli National Park.
Wow.
And also, so I never, before I scouted, but even now, like I'm not so into fashion. So I don't really read magazines or know all the important photographers. Like obviously when I have a job and my agent tells me like it's with Steven Meisel, so like it's so important, then I'll have a look who he is. But before that I didn't really know anyone. But then that campaign, because it was shot with animals, it was in the tribe, the Maasai tribe.
Oh wow, that's so cool.
Yeah, it was Stephen McCurry. And I did know Stephen McCurry because we get National Geographic magazines like every month in our house.
Yeah.
So I was like, wow, like this is actually someone I look up to. So for me personally, that was, I think, my favorite job, like experience. But then another, like my favorite show, for example, which I think was really cool, is when we walked on the Trevi fountain, like on the fountain. So they put glass. It was for Fendi. And I was also, I think I was 17 or 18, and like also like Kendall Jenner was there, and so it was like a whole big thing. And then like walking on the fountain in Rome, just like that experience, and it was also a beautiful collection, and so I really felt magical.
Like, sounds magical.
Yeah.
When you deal with or work with the other models, is it, and I guess it probably at this point has been an evolution of, you didn't know what you're doing, you're kind of just learning, where now you know what you're doing, you're comfortable in your skin, you know you're good. How is it working with the other girls? Has it always been the same, or they're friendly, they're not friendly? Like, what's your behind the scenes look like?
I think when I started, it was always like, also there are way more models right now than there used to be like 10 years ago. So also for the shows and like show seasons, it were a lot of times the same girls over and over. So, you know, you start to like get to know each other. And in the beginning, you're all 15, 16-year-old. So everyone was pretty shy, not really know what they're doing, like and then over time, there are girls that I truly connect with, and that are until today still girls that whenever we have a job together or we bump into each other, like here I was doing a workout class like 2 days ago here in London, and a girl that I hadn't seen in like 6 years, and we were both just like, wow, it's so nice to see you, because we both remember each other as like just a genuine like nice person. But then there are also girls that I remember that I knew when we were 16, and you know, we get along and we're just very nice to each other, but then they start becoming more famous and making money and just like totally like kind of lose themselves, or like start feeling like they become more than you in a way. And I've always, like I never value someone on their status, but just as a person. So I also don't really get along with people that do that to others. So that for me was something like, there are girls like that, I'll always stay nice to them, but just the way that they treat other people, or would treat me in certain, or like they would kind of give you a choice, like forming groups, right? Like in Belgium that happens a lot, especially with nationalities. Like, and then I speak Flemish, so then I could kind of join the Dutch girls, but I love connecting with everyone. So it's not, I don't want to talk Dutch the whole time, because then all the other foreign like people in a way, they couldn't understand. But I'd rather speak English so everyone can connect with each other. So that was something that happened a lot too.
what is something that you, I guess, what's the biggest learning kind of thing that you learned with modeling?
Hmm.
I guess
Like a
lesson maybe?
lesson.
Yeah. Oh, and have you ever had like a fail, like a blooper during a show? We'll get there.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. I can tell that as well. So first the lesson. I think for me overall, because as I said, like I've gone through a lot, like mentally, physically, like I wasn't in a great place, and like I had to work on myself for a lot of years. But I think one of the main things is just you can't, and I also never do it to other people. It's like you can't judge someone from the way they look, because that's also with modeling the thing that happens to us all the time. Like yes, you may see that I walked for Dior, right? But you didn't see that I did like 100 other castings that someone told me that I wasn't good enough, that I wasn't like I was too fat or I was too skinny or I was like my hair wasn't good. Like you just get rejected for, and it's not, you don't even get a chance to know someone, right? It's just from the way you look. And that's something, and it's for me, my life these days still, right? Like I walk around in New York, be like, oh, she's a model. She probably doesn't eat anything, does yoga classes, like is a bitch. Like it's just people judge each other so fast. And I think that's one of the, yeah, just like the biggest lessons, I guess, from being in the industry and just life in general.
Yeah. It almost feels like because because that's a reality of it. And especially in big cities here in New York, I'm sure there, that people judge in just a second. Everyone is so quick to judge. And it's like on your side, I think that so rejection is so hard. Like I had for a lot of like I don't know, maybe 8 years, I was dealing with a lot of like the theater, Broadway kind of actor, dancer, the singers, all those people that I would teach with. Like they would be other instructors. And I would talk to them about this casting and that casting. And I remember them telling me, like, oh, I went to sing this, but I didn't look the part, or I went to sing this, my vocal, this, that, like all these issues. And I'm like, the amount of rejection that they get, and you also would get, it's like with most people, would just completely crush them, like just demoralize. You'd have to change careers. Like it would, like I couldn't imagine all that rejection. So
Mm-hmm.
when you, and to me, because I know this, like when I meet you or when I meet other people that are in those types of fields, I know that they have to have like serious determination and drive and willpower, like to know that this is what they want to do and they're going to do it regardless of how much rejection they get. So it's really important to know, like, you never know what someone's going through, so you can't judge them.
Yeah. Yeah, and I also, when you talk about rejection or it being just for me, it's like when I was younger, like a kid, it was kind of the opposite. Like I always got judged because I wasn't into fashion, as I said, like my clothes. I was just like always outdoors, like playing soccer with the guys. Like I got bullied when I was younger too, and because I wasn't the pretty girl, I was more like the tomboy. And then making a switch to the modeling, like so I didn't really feel like I fitted in when I
Yeah,
was a
how
kid.
confusing.
Like, yeah, and then I kind of came in that other industry where they kind of picked me for what I looked like, but then I still didn't feel like I fitted in there either. So just like my whole life for a long time was like kind of, I felt a bit lost. And like the reason I think why I just kept going is because I really didn't know anymore where I would fit in. Like I was like, this is it and this is all I have. And but then by growing, and that's also why I coach people on like rejection too. It's because of what I've been through myself and like that learning to never take rejection personally. It's always like you can't take it personally. It's more about the situation and just like take the positive sides from it and just accept it as like, okay, they don't need me for this job because of their reasons, but it has nothing to do with me.
Yeah, it is. It's so important to know that. When you, so, well, I guess two things. when they scouted you out and you're like 14 or 15 and you're obviously 14, 15, even at 20, and I'm, in my 30s now, I feel like sometimes I think, what am I doing? Like, do I really want this? Don't I want, like, what's going? So I feel like you're constantly evolving and changing and learning about yourself. And I hope it's a forever thing, right? Like, you don't want to get so stagnant and boring where you know all the answers to everything in life. But when you're preyed upon at that age from agencies, and do you think that they might do it at such a young age because they know that you're so malleable? Like, they can say, okay, you have to get skinnier at that age, and you're like, oh, okay. Where in now, you're going to probably say, no, this is about it. Or, like, this is just what I am, take it or leave it. There's going to be another brand that will take me for what I am. Does that make sense?
Yeah, and it's, I mean, in a way, it's kind of creepy sometimes, I guess, because when, like, my own memories from me doing all that, I was such a grown-up, like, I was 16, walking for Louis Vuitton between all the grown-ups, like, I was just like, no, this is my life, this is my job. But then when my youngest sister turned 16, and I looked at, she's my baby, and I was like, I can't believe that I traveled the world at that age. I was like, she's such a baby. And she's 18 now, and I still, like, she's to me my baby sister. And obviously she's growing up, but and then obviously from now being able to look back at myself back then, like, I fully accept, like, and I'm also not surprised why mentally I really wasn't in a good place. And as you just said, like, I do think for a reason they aim for younger girls, because you in a way get brainwashed. As I said, like, to me it felt like those castings and those people, my whole life was depending on it. That's like how it felt to me, and it's not the reality, but it was my reality.
Yeah. So being active, playing sports, doing those types of things, naturally you have I don't want to say petite, but like a thin frame. And when they ask you to lose more weight, do they at least help in, like, giving healthy option? Not that it's so healthy, because it's not, but like healthy options, rather than just saying, okay, don't eat, or eat these healthy, like, go protein, go, like, you know what I'm saying? Rather than, because there are healthy ways to lose weight when you don't really have weight to lose.
So for me, and again, I do want to, like, make clear that this is me talking about 10 years ago. So, like, things are now totally different. So I don't think they would go ahead the same way. But yeah, when I was younger, as I said, I did sports. I did gymnastics, like, played soccer, like, just like rock climbing. So I wasn't fat, but I was very muscular. And especially for shows, one of the most important measurements used to be your hips. And my hips were like 97 centimeters, but they have to be under 90 to walk a show. So that was one of the main things, is in, like, okay, we got to work on this. And then when I was 15, they sent me to Milan to meet my agency, to do my first castings, also to start learning English, because I couldn't speak any English.
Really?
Yeah.
Your English is very good.
Yeah, we learn we learn French in school as second language, because I speak Flemish. But yeah, it's just through modeling and through practicing and living in New York now that it became better. But yes, and they told me, my mother agency told me, like, you're going to Milan, and there you're gonna get on a sport program, and they're gonna help you work on your sizes. So me as an athlete, like, I love working out, like, I love doing sports. I got very excited to go on that trip and to, like, get on a diet, to get to work out the way they say it, and get a trainer. But I got there, and they grabbed me by my legs, and they said, we got to work on this. And now we see you, we think that you should just not work out, just walk around a lot, but, like, we need to get, like, these muscles need to go away. So, and then I remember them taking me to an Italian restaurant. So I got super excited, like, Italy, my first time. Also, it was my first airplane ever that time. Like,
wow.
Yeah, with my family, we only go camping. We with the car. So I was very excited with the pizza and pasta, and they all ordered pizza and pasta, and then they were like, we'll order for you, right? Like to start, working on it. And I got this like tiny piece of fish on vegetables.
Oh my God.
And so that was for me, like, and I will never forget that, I guess, because I was so young, and it was just like so, I was like, yeah, that was like a reality shock.
Traumatizing.
Yeah, and so from there, and then I remember coming back home, like I didn't take it like as strict when I was there, but I did not work out. Like I just walked around a lot and just enjoyed Italy, and then I came home and I kind of like started working on my own diet too. But yeah, I did not get the right like guidance. 'Cause my mom is a nutritionist,
Mm-hmm.
so when she saw how I was taking it, because they also told me to fully cut out carbs and like to not work out, and so I started doing very long runs and yoga to just like get those lean muscles, and I ate less and less and less, because muscle also doesn't just like disappear like that.
Correct.
Like losing fat is pretty easy. You eat healthy, you work out, and I mean, I'm not saying it's easy for everyone.
I gotcha.
But yeah, muscle, it just like it stays there, and then so for months nothing happened, and in the end I was eating maybe a salad and an apple and like going for long runs and doing yoga, and then in 1 month time I suddenly lost 22 pounds as a 15-year-old. So it's when your muscles don't have enough nutrients, they start kind of eating themselves.
Mm-hmm.
To explain it easy.
Yeah.
So yeah, and for me that like, yeah, it was not good, because my brain functioning, just like being at that age, like my hormones were on zero. So, and as I said, like I'm not really blaming the industry or blaming, because in the end, like I was the one doing it, right? But I also didn't get the right guidance to do it in a healthy way, which is why I didn't do it in a proper way. And just, that's why I struggled with some health issues at the time. So yeah, I definitely, I do know that these days, as I said, it's not as strict. It's also because I'm very hard on myself, that when I set myself a goal, I just keep going.
Mm-hmm.
So, but yeah.
Do you think, do they have something like a program? I mean, the modeling network is so huge, but I guess once you're inside, it's pretty small. Do they have like a go-to nutritionist or like a go-to someone to help girls lose weight? Because they're like, when you don't have weight to lose, there's no good way to go about it. But there is a healthy way, like to cut back. It's just going to take longer rather than just eating nothing. Like, you went through it. But they don't have someone or to like help everyone?
So I don't think there's like a specific person. Also, one of the things about agencies that a lot of people not always know, but an agency or your agents are never gonna spend money on you. Like anything, like if an agent says like, I'll buy you a flight, it always will, like eventually when you have a job, like they'll take that money back from that flight. So an agency is never gonna actually like spend money. So the same thing with like nutritionists, like some agencies may have these people, but you'll probably will have to pay out of pocket in some way. And back then, I'm not sure. Right now, I do see that, for example, like one of the last Dior shows I walked, and then there was this like little area for like the models that we could kind of take a break, because like when your hair, makeup, and people are pulling you, there's never like a moment that you can just like be, and for example, like just like eat your sandwich. And then you could be there, and there was like someone you could talk to, or like cards laying there for like more like therapists or something, like people to talk to. And but like health programs, like what I know, for myself, I think because of my own experience with the modeling industry, I've always like, I'm very into nutrition and health like right now, because what I did to my body was not okay. And for a long time I was scared I went too far. But because of like being really into health and nutrition, and like right now I found a very healthy like balance and a great lifestyle. And But that's why I also wouldn't trust the industry with like guidance
Mm-hmm.
there. So I would never, go ask there for help in a way, like more outside.
With the stuff that your brand, you have like a, I guess, your lifestyle health coaching? Like,
Mm-hmm.
tell me about it a little.
So mainly because of what I've been through as myself when I was younger. And then when I moved to New York, I stopped school because I was studying physical therapy. But because we don't have online university, I transferred to online courses. And then I had that interest because of my own experience in coaching and like psychology. And so I joined a platform from the UK, the Academy of Modern Applied Psychology.
Mm-hmm.
And I just became very passionate about ID to be able to become the person for others that I needed back then myself.
Mm-hmm.
So these days, like I help others kind of find their purpose in life, like fight limiting beliefs, work on self-esteem, set goals, taking action, like things that I struggled with when I was younger, but that I overcame myself. That's what I do.
That's awesome. What is the? I guess that do you see or interact, like when you're doing shows and stuff, younger models, or you just kind of are with the same models, like when you do different things?
No, it's modeling is still from all
over
different
everywhere.
Yeah.
Yeah, you should
It's
definitely
always
push
been-
your stuff, because I think that it's a huge. Every model I've ever met has been through something like this, and most of the times they don't get it figured out. They just end up lost.
Yeah. It's it's something, as I say, like it's for me. I still work as a model, right? Like I still, and now like I fully accept the job, and I'm very grateful for the opportunity that I got. But helping people, like that's like what I like an adding value, and because I know how I felt back then, and I didn't have anyone to turn to at some point until I got through coaching myself too, and found my own purpose and my community. And I think it's definitely something that should be pushed more in general. And just also one of those like little aspects is the not judging and not being like the rejection, and like not taking it personal. And so it can change someone's life. Like you can save someone's life.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think being a female in a big city in general is hard enough. So then when you have all these other components, especially if you're basically just brought here, you don't speak the language, there's like all these different components to it. Like, to have something from someone who's been through it would be a complete game changer.
Mm-hmm.
When you have you seen a drastic, I guess, difference, increase? How does it work with pay with modeling? Like, when you're doing the shows, you're basically just marketing yourself.
Mm-hmm.
When you do a campaign, or like, where is? At one point, I heard that it's the I think the billboards, or some, like, the photo shoots is where it is, or
So shows are exposure, magazines as well. So for example, if you shoot a Vogue, you usually don't get paid. I mean, you don't get paid, and sometimes you even have to like buy your hotel and stuff. Like it depends what the budget is.
really?
So magazines, shows, it's no money, because also for the shows you have to think about that. You have to buy your flights, you have to buy your Airbnb, you have to, because you're there for all the brands at the same time. So there's not just like one brand kind of covering stuff. While if you have a direct booking, so what you were referring to is called a direct booking, which can be e-com, a lookbook, a campaign, which is then maybe a billboard or like pictures for in a store. Then if one client books you, they usually cover flights, they cover the hotel, and you get paid for the job. So that's that's where the money's at, because you're not really paying anything out of pocket, and you build your rate because of doing like the more high fashion you do, or like shows and exposure you have, the higher your rates get. because like when I started, I started doing campaigns for a very low rate too, but then because I'm in it for a lot of years, like my rate goes up, and then also your agency won't give you for less than you work to, like you reach a certain level, so they're not going to give you away for anything less.
And what is a general, like, what do the agencies take? What is their percentage?
Usually, so it depends from country or city. London is, I think, 25%. Then Paris, I think 30. Like it's known that there it's a bit higher with the taxes and stuff.
Wow, it's a lot.
And then the US and the rest of Europe is usually 20%.
Wow, they take a big percentage and they don't cover anything.
No, yeah.
That's crazy. So when you're running around like a maniac during Fashion Week, you're paying for all your Ubers, your taxis. That's why you're always on a bicycle.
Yep.
You're like, yep.
Yeah, I'm very frugal. Like, I mean, I know the things I think are worth it spending money, but I hate spending money on things I don't see the value.
Yeah, and I mean, if you can like stretch your legs and work out a little bit to get from point A to point B when you're just going to be kind of cooped up, then why not?
Exactly.
Okay, last thing before we go. You got to share your blooper.
Oh, I think for me, I mean, the one I thought about is we walked for, it was Dior Sauvage. So it was more like a resort show in LA. And it was like in the hills. And because it was LA, like all the celebrities, but like Johnny Depp, like Joe Jonas, like all like people I knew. Because like sometimes they're like fashion people, but like these people I knew. But so we were walking the show and it was on sand and we were wearing sandals. And so I lost my shoe. And like I lost the shoe. So I just like kept walking and like barefoot, but with like one shoe on, which was just like for me, just like knowing that all those people are watching. And then I couldn't walk the finale because I didn't have my shoe. My shoe was like still there. So that's like, I think the thing I thought about.
I wonder how you lost your shoe. It just...
Yeah, so the laces, when they're like tied laces, and so probably because when you dress, like there are always people that dress you, so you don't do it yourself, and so she probably didn't
tie it good enough.
Well. So, yeah.
Does things like that happen often, or it's like a one-off?
I think that's the only I remember. What does happen sometimes is, like I remember once, and it's actually on a picture, that I had such a long dress and high heels that the dress was fully under my shoe.
Mm-hmm.
So I was like walking on it. So you're like walking like that, but you can't really do anything or stop. I think it's like as long as you don't fall, like you make it work, right? But yeah, it could be better.
And the shoes, I guess the clothes they kind of fit you for. But the shoes, are they actually your size, or you just kind of got to make it work?
Wow, that's an accurate question. I'm a 40. I've walked shows on a 36, and I've walked shows on a 42.
Oh my
God. And sometimes it's like, when they think like, oh, it's sneakers, but high fashion sneakers are usually not even comfortable, and if they're like 3 sizes too small, you can get like, I mean, my feet, and that's something that if you would ask my mom, I think it's something she would remember from the shows when she used to come with me, or like when I would come home to Belgium after fashion weeks, like my feet were like bleeding, like wounds. You're constantly compete on like every side of your foot, because and then walking on bigger heels or like heels that are painful, and that's definitely something that it's not, and they usually have, sometimes you do a fitting and then you fit a 39 on heels and you're like, okay, these fit great for tomorrow, I have these shoes, and then you come on the show and they're like, oh, they changed your shoes, and it's suddenly like a 41, and then you can't like change, you're just a model, right? Like you can't say anything to anyone, and if they only had 139 and they gave it to another girl, then that's just what it is. And so it's been rough.
Yeah, that's horrible. That sounds like a torture. Like
Yeah, I mean, it was for me something that, especially because I care so much about my body, that after every season, like also once I broke the inside of a toe during fashion weeks, so I couldn't just, stop in the middle. And I remember being at the last show that like I was crying. I was just walking, and we had to do 2 rehearsals. And after, I said, like, if we're gonna do one more rehearsal, like I can't walk the show. Like I'm just like in so much pain right now.
You broke your you broke your toe from stuffing it in a shoe?
So I don't know how exactly I broke it. I remember in New York I started having some pain, and then you keep walking on heels and keep traveling and just walking to all the castings, and it just got worse and worse. And then only by the time after Fashion Week I saw a doctor, they were like, it's been broken for like over a month. Like you should have done something, but because there's no time and I don't have insurance like everywhere, but yeah, I waited too long. So yeah.
So what do? They have to. It's a toe. You just deal with it, or.
Well, yeah, it's like like from your big toe, the thing that has your balance.
Yeah.
Like at that point, I just had to rest. But it's something that even now, I think it's like 6 years ago.
Wow.
But even now, it sometimes hurts still. Like it's something because I took too long to treat it at the time.
That's horrible. Okay, so we'll wrap up because I know we have to go, but share your social media, where people can find you. I don't know. I know you're on Instagram, but anything else you're on. Yeah.
Okay, so yeah, I do have my Instagram, just my main one. It's Kirin Podcast, but I hope you can write it out somewhere.
I will. I'll put it here, but actually your name is here, so you can see. I don't know.
Okay. Yeah, for me, it just says you. So, so it's just my name. And then I have my life coaching page as well. I keep it separate because it's easier to actually connect with people that are interested in coaching. And it's also, you can find the link to it on my other Instagram page. It's kirin.d.lifecoach. And my website is on my page as well. So, but those are my main platforms. Like I'm not such a social media fan. I love to see how people are using it in a positive way these days, like you do. So I really love it for that. But that's the only social media platform that I can maintain.
Well, I'm so glad we finally got to connect. Thank you for I feel like adjusting our schedule and doing whatever we can to make it work. So thank you.
Yeah, thank you. It was lovely. And also nice to talk to someone from New York while I'm here.